So we have everybody that we need,
Okay.
and we have a vice chair. So if Anthony, if you'd like to start the meeting, you are welcome to do so.
Yep, my thing just closed on me, so I will reopen it again.
Sure.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Good evening. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Petitioners should try their best to limit presentations to 10 minutes. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in the order to grant the variances. In the absence of a full board at tonight's meeting, which we do have one person missing, petitioners will have the ability to request that their agenda item be postponed until a future meeting due to the circumstance. Petitioners must inform the vice chair or the chairperson of the staff's presentation after the staff's presentation and the public hearing. With that, we'll start off. Call to order.
Just a refresher, since it's been a while for everybody. With roll call, you should announce your name and where you're calling in from. Equally, when we conduct votes on individual cases, it'll be the same manner, announcing your name and your vote.
Okay. So we'll start in the upper left corner for my screen. Ms. Robinson.
I'm here in Royal Oak.
Okay. Mr. Moore.
Travis Moore here in Royal Oak.
Ms. George.
Maggie George in Royal Oak.
Mr. Gavin.
Rob Gavin here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Klatt.
Jeff Klatt in Royal Oak.
Ms. Zukin.
Deborah Zukin, Royal Oak.
Mr. Reddy.
Arvin Reddy here in Royal Oak.
And you have Anthony Ovak here in Royal Oak. All right. First order, well, approve the minutes of June 10th, 2021. You have any comments regarding those minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Ms. Zukin?
I will move to approve the minutes of June 10th, 2021.
Okay. I saw Mr. Klatt with the second.
Or second.
All those in, or we'll go through the roll call one at a time. We'll go reverse order this time. Mr. Reddy?
Yes. Sorry.
Zukin?
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
Ms. George?
Yes.
Did you,
Yes, from me.
okay, sorry, didn't hear you. More?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay. I don't believe we have any old business from the previous meeting, so we will start with the first new business of this meeting. Case number 21-07-29. Mr. Murphy.
Yes. I'm going to share my screen. That'll be helpful to our conversation. The subject property is located on Baldwin between Fairgrove and Alexander. The petitioner has and I'll refer to the drawing. They have a house with a driveway in the extended side yard that leads to the backyard. You can see the back door of the house leads out to a patio area, and the petitioner is proposing to construct an elevated deck, and it's elevated at different points. It's at 26 inches above grade, and then another, it steps down to 19 inches. You'll see that they've shaded on their drawing, I'll zoom in a little bit, they've shaded the outline of the proposed deck. Then it'll be surrounded, it will rather enclose the tree, and it'll lead out to a new swim spa. You'll note that the deck is proposed to extend all the way to the side yard setback. The deck will result in there being no side yard setback for the house, or rather from the deck, from the property line. And the ordinance states that there be at least a 3-foot setback for any deck that's elevated at least 6 inches above grade. Again, that the deck that they're proposing is taller than that, so it needs to provide at least, they need to provide at least a 3-foot setback. And this is the view of the current condition. The steps out from the back door of the house, and then this is the area that they would have the location of their proposed deck. They've also provided this vantage point from the back window of their house. So I think that's a good background of what they're proposing to do. I will stop sharing the video and we can ask the petitioner to.
Before they do that, Joseph,
Correct.
anyone have any questions for Mr. Murphy? Sukin first.
Mr. Murphy, do you have any idea why the ordinance is written the way it is? Because if it's 5 inches, then it can go all the way up to the fence. Is it a safety issue?
I don't have any historical background on that, unfortunately. It's one of those provisions that's been in the ordinance for quite some time. We refer to it, and very seldom do we refer to it. Most individuals that are constructing decks, elevated decks, want to have some type of setback from their property line for maintenance of that landscape area and for the future maintenance of the deck or access to the fence. So it's extremely rare that we see an instance like this where an individual wants to construct the deck all the way to the side property line.
Mr. Klatt?
Just going to ask if the building department has looked at this from a code compliance standpoint at all. I don't believe it's an issue, but in many cases we can't build to the lot line from a code standpoint without some kind of fire protection rating on it. So just curious if the building department has looked at this at all.
I did show them. They did not indicate that it violated any of the building code requirements. No.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy?
I'll point out, I neglected to state that the petitioner has provided 3 letters of support. 2 of those letters are from the neighbors on each side of their house, and they also provided a letter of support from the individual that lives across the street. We did not receive any audio or written public comments other than those 3 letters of support.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, the petitioners may go ahead and introduce themselves and their case.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Sorry, one moment.
Can you hear us okay?
Let's be-
All right, so thank you so much again for taking the time. I know the last couple of months has been pretty crazy, and so we appreciate the time. But like Mr. Joseph Murphy was saying, typically we wouldn't want to go all the way to the property line, but because our yard is so narrow, like you saw in the photo, our yard is already fenced in all the way from the back of the house through the corner. So if we want to preserve that oak tree that's in the middle, the thing that we wanted to do was build an elevated deck so we could go around that. We had explored cement and brick, but because the tree's so large and the roots, that wouldn't work. So with the 19 inches and being able to go all the way to that, use that 3 feet of variance, then we're able to have some more usable space to put, even a table or some chairs back there around the tree. And since the fence is there already, even the 19 inches up from the deck, we'll still have a lot of privacy. On the opposite side of the fence, there's just a driveway. So there's still a lot of ventilation and ways to access, the decking or anything that we need to access there for maintenance. It doesn't interfere with light or anything like that with our neighbors or anything. So there's still a lot of privacy with a little bit of the elevation with that deck there. But our main thing is definitely just to have some usable space. We're investing a lot of money in the property. We just had the lines buried with DTE. And we're investing, we're using a really sustainable decking material to make it look really nice. And we just want that usable space, and the 3 feet coming off. And with that tree there, it would just,
it wouldn't have much.
We wouldn't have much left to work with. So we're just looking for the 3 feet, and it's just a 19-inch high deck right there along the fence. And then it drops back down to 6 inches in the picture, if you could see that amount there. But yeah, we did get some support from both neighbors on both sides of our house and then directly in the back of our house. So me see if I have any other notes. But yeah, I think that's basically our request. We just want to finally have some usable space there. We've lived in Royal Oak for a really long time. We plan to stay at this house. And we love that tree. It's huge and it provides tons of shade, and it's survived all of the many storms that we've had lately. So we want to keep it, and we're asking that you approve our variance of the 3 feet. Any other questions?
I was going to say, before we ask questions, I was going to say if you had anything else. Mr. Murphy, you said there was one public comment. Was that on this issue or was it something else?
It was another case.
Just want to make sure before we open up other questions. So questions on this side, Ms. Zukin, I saw your hand.
Yeah, you just mentioned that it drops down to 6 inches in the back. Can you explain that a little more for me?
Sure. If Mr. Joseph Murphy, if you could put the picture back up, if you can. Either way, there was, so just past the tree, we were going to the decking was going to drop down along the fence line back down to 6 inches. That's allowed. Just alongside of that, where that white square is.
That's where the swim
That's where the
spa
swim spa is going to go. So we figured with water splashing and things like that, we didn't want a lot of mud there. So we're just going to have a little decking along the base of the ground there.
Okay, so the steps down will be 6 inches above. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Yeah. So the 26 inches is by the back door, like that's, to step up into the house. The primary elevation of the deck will be
That's
19
shaded.
inches
Yeah.
above grade. And then along the side of the swim spa on either side, extending to the end of it, will be 6 inch above grade deck. So we didn't need to include that, I think, in our plan. That's kind of a late addition, but that'll meet the current code of restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Was there a particular reason in the design why you couldn't do the 6-inch high for the whole thing with like the step down from the house and have it all one level? Was there some reason for that?
Primarily to deal with the large roots of the oak tree there. A 6-inch deck, it wouldn't be feasible the way the roots are, splayed out across that area. So we had to elevate the deck a little bit. So we figured 19 inches wasn't too obtrusive for the neighbors, and they all signed off on it too. So that's not trying to make this as easy as possible on everybody and create a good space for us to enjoy our deck.
Yeah.
Okay.
But really, the roots of the tree.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I had one question for you. Since you are concerned about the tree, my thought was, did you go to a horticulturist or anyone to see if you're covering up this much of the roots and not allowing much airflow or water flow to get in at that point? Are you going to actually be causing more damage to that tree? And therefore, is there a different way that you could be doing the deck?
We did actually. We have a landscaping tree company that comes out to elevate the tree once every year, every other year, depending on the growth, to take care of it and keep it away from the house and keep the branches nice. And we do that in the winter time. And we talked to them about our plans and if that would, because we even had the cement pad and we had the building permit for that. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to interfere with the tree roots at all with pouring any of that. And so we're far enough away from there as well. So yeah, we were concerned with that. Absolutely.
And the area, there'll be enough area around the base of the roots of around the tree itself. So water can get down in there and ventilation and all that. So our arborists are fine with the plan. They don't think that should cause any issue with the, growth of the tree in the future.
And our contractor will have the decking out far enough for growth as well.
George?
So if the tree weren't there, would you guys be moving your entire swim spa and deck plan 3 feet out from the fence and just encroaching more on the other side of the property?
Yes, we probably would have just went with a cement patio or something a lot simpler. This is definitely.
We really love the tree. We want to
Yes.
save it. It has to be I think the house is from 1923 originally. I think it's an original tree. So it's a beautiful oak tree. We want to keep that, and that's what led us down this path. So it's one of those things we're big into preservation. We want to make sure that that tree is there for a long time and is viable for any future homeowners in 30 years, you know, when we go to Florida. So.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, before we go and pull it back to this side and discuss and vote, as you know, our board is down a member. Do you want us to proceed or do you want us to delay another month?
No,
You
so
can proceed.
you can proceed.
Okay.
So you have 7 here today and we need 5, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll pull it back to this side of the table. Discussion and or motions. Anyway.
Sorry, there's 8. 8
Yeah, there's
members of
8.
the board.
Yeah.
Just missed down
Sorry.
1.
Yeah, only down 1. But yes, you only need 5. Ms. Sukin.
I will move to approve the variances requested.
I saw Ms. Robinson's hand
I'll second.
first.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
Ms.
I,
Sukin. Oh,
no, go.
were you seconding?
Yes.
Ms. Sukin.
I have to say that I have a raised deck behind my house and it's 3 feet from the fence and all I grow there is weeds. I can still see into my neighbor's property and that's irritating to both them and me, but your neighbors have already approved it. So I don't see the purpose for the 3 feet. So and it is because it's narrow and you are trying to save the tree, which I really appreciate because I have a 1923 house also with a lot of old oak trees.
Yeah.
So I think that you do have a practical difficulty in saving that tree and getting a usable deck in there. So I will move to approve.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Ms. Robinson.
I agree. They're trying to save that tree and I'm really appreciative of that. I'm kind of in the same neighborhood here. I don't really see a problem with going all the way to the fence. Again, the weed issue, neighbors are okay with it. I don't see any reason not to approve this.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to, Mr. Gavin and Mr. Clapp?
I just wanted to add, along with the factors that we're supposed to analyze, that it's doing justice to the property owner and to the neighboring owners, since they are all in agreement with it. And then along with that, the tree's been there, probably original. Certainly, it's been there for a long time. So this is not a problem that was created by the homeowners presently. So, and I think Ms. Zukin covered the remaining factors. So I just wanted to throw those in there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clapp?
Add any more. I appreciate you reaching out to your neighbors. I think it's noble your attempt to save the tree here. And as long as the building department approves it, I'm all set. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. We'll go in the order of how people are arranged now on my screen because people jumped around. Mr. Gavin, you're first up this time.
Aye.
Mr. Clatt? I'm assuming that was an aye. You blinked out for a second there.
Yes, I approve.
Ms. Zukin?
Yes.
Mr. Reddy?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. George?
Yes.
Okay, and I also will vote yes, so you have been approved. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
you.
Appreciate it.
Is there anything we need to do next? Or you file everything with the state or?
I will let the building department know that it's been approved. I don't recall whether you've applied for a permit to construct that deck or just the swim spa. Can you?
Got it.
But if your contractor has not yet applied for a permit to construct the deck, they can do so tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for all your help throughout all this. We
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Okay, next we will move on to case number 21-07-30, 236 Woodlawn Avenue. Mr. Murphy. When you're ready, of course. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun for you.
Quite all right.
You're lucky enough to do double duty tonight.
This is Sue Fabian. I'm representing Catherine Ashbell. who is
Yes.
present.
Yes. Hi, Sue. We're going to start your case in just a moment. If I can bring it up on screen. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as we begin this particular request. This site is located at the intersection of Woodland and Glendale. The house maintains a driveway off of Woodlawn, as you can see. I'll hover over it on the aerial photograph. And they have a concrete drive approach off of Glendale that leads to a dirt/gravel driveway off of Glendale. And as many of the board members may know from several recent variance requests, the city's zoning ordinance requires that a driveway be made of a hard surface material such as asphalt or concrete or some type of impervious paver like individual concrete pavers. Loose gravel, dirt, or sod is not an acceptable driveway per the ordinance. So the current circumstance off of Glendale is non-conforming. The city's engineering, the engineering division of the city's community development department, it has informed various property owners along the streets adjacent to Glendale of an infrastructure project that's occurring, and the engineering division has identified this as a non-conforming driveway, and in such the project would eliminate this drive approach and bring it into compliance. So at the end of their infrastructure project, their intent is to come back through and bring many of the non-conforming driveways, such as the one directly across the street, remove those and put in a full height curb and eliminate access to, in this case, this individual's gravel driveway to the rear of their house. So the petitioner is looking to retain their concrete drive approach on Glendale, and I'll show it for you there on the screen. That's a good illustration of the current condition. The petitioner is looking to retain everything as is, and for the engineering division not to remove it. Again, that would eliminate access to the back where they store an older trailer and several other items. And the petitioner has provided, we did receive 3 written comments that are included at the end of your report, and there's one audio comment that I can play for you. If you bear with me, I can bring that up and play that for everyone so that the board and the petitioner have an understanding of the comments from the neighbor. So I'm going to attempt to do that now.
Yes, this is Deborah Ivy. I also live in Royal Oak. I'm calling about case number 210730. It's at 236 Woodlawn in Royal Oak, Michigan. This is about the second driveway on this piece of property. I absolutely don't see that the driveway on Glendale is causing a problem for anyone. This lady has lived there for over 50 years, and that driveway has been there all that time. None of the neighbors have a problem with it. The lady takes good care of her property, always out there working in her flower beds. I've also noticed that there are several houses with double driveways on Mount Vernon. In fact, one of them at 239 Mount Vernon just put in a second drive. So one is on one side of the house and the new one is on the opposite side of the house. It's got a paved approach and a gravel drive to the backyard, which is similar to the one that you want taken out. I don't understand why one resident on one street and another about 2 blocks away is being told that they're taking out all second driveways. This one was just put in. So I certainly hope that you will allow this lady her driveway. Like I said, it's been there a long time. She's been there a long time. it's not that big of an issue for anybody but you guys, I guess. So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Did you have anything else to present or, okay.
Nope, no parting comments.
Then anyone on the board have a question for Mr. Murphy? Ms. George? And then-
So the city just wants to put the curb up where there is no curb, right? We're not asking Ms. Ashbaugh to pave that driveway or that grassy part that might be a driveway or whatever. We're just saying the city's gonna put a curb there. Are we asking her to proactively do anything? Or is she just contesting the curb being put up?
It's related to the curb.
Okay.
We wouldn't have any means of forcing her to pave that area as a hard surface driveway. She's in the request. She's looking for the city to officially recognize that as essentially a second drive, a second gravel drive. So if the board does approve the variance request, there would be a formal action taken by the city to recognize that there is a second drive approach and that the driveway is of non-conforming material.
Okay, and then my second question to you, Mr. Murphy, is Sue Fabian's letter states that the additional gravel drive has been in conformity for 63 years. Do we know if that's true?
There's never been a provision in the zoning ordinance that recognized gravel as an acceptable material for a driveway. No, that's
Okay.
never been. The driveway, or the gravel may have been put in place for many, many, many years, but that's never been an acceptable material under any of the different zoning ordinance amendments throughout the years.
Okay, perfect. That's all I had for you. Thanks.
Mr. Klatt?
I assume that the neighbor to the west, they've elected to have their apron removed then? Seeing
Yes.
no one's request, okay.
And I want to bring that up to show your astute point. This subject property is highlighted here at 236. This is the drive approach and the gravel driveway. Directly across the street, there is a similar circumstance, and we did approach them and they elected not to seek a variance to retain that. So that one will be removed.
And last question, if she is denied tonight, is it at her cost to replace the curb and the sod or lawn in that area in the right of way, or is that the city expense?
The city would pick up the fee associated with that. It would be borne by the cost of the cost center for the project. So no, there would be no direct fee to the applicant or the property owner. I apologize, property owner.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Oh, Nancy, did you have a question?
I just wanted to know the side driveway that she has, like by her side door. How I read someplace in this that wasn't very wide, or how wide is that driveway, like that runs parallel?
I'm going to look at the sketch that she provided. Perhaps that'll give us an indication. It doesn't indicate the width of that driveway. Perhaps Ms. Fabian knows, or if Ms. Fabian can let us know. I see several different people in the waiting room with phone numbers that none of them appear to correlate to your client. Do you know if your client has called in to tonight's meeting, Ms. Fabian?
My client is across the desk from me.
Ah, okay, that's great. She's here. Very good. She can answer the question then.
All right, then we will let, if there's no other questions for Mr. Murray. Oh, yep. Go ahead, Ms. George.
Sorry, one more. Okay, so I saw some arguments about this not being an abandoned piece of the property, and this argument kind of hinging on abandonment or discontinuance. And when we're talking about that, are we talking about the driveway being quote unquote discontinued or abandoned as a driveway, or just in general if it looks like it's abandoned? Because it looks like she doesn't use it as a driveway anyway. She does not drive on it. She doesn't park on it. So does it matter that it's not being used as a driveway, or that it's being used at all?
I would defer to the petitioner since it was their written comment. I'm not entirely certain of how they wanted to approach that argument or defense or basis. So I think that's probably a question best served for the petitioner to answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, Ms. Fabian, you can go ahead, please introduce yourself as well as your there, and you can go ahead and present your case.
I know. Okay, Sue Fabian. I am an attorney. I have Catherine Ashbell present with me, along with the neighbor to the west, Tom Dunstan, who has that other double driveway issue. And so I have many comments. First, I would totally contest Mr. Murphy's representation that there's never been an ordinance about, I can't remember how he put it, about the surface of the driveway. When these drives were put in 63 years ago, they were totally conforming. The city has presented absolutely no evidence that there's been abandonment for a year. We have pictures from one snapshot in time. That is absolutely no proof that it's been abandoned for a year. Secondly, the city has totally ignored a requirement of its own ordinance, and that's intention to abandon. There's never been any intention to abandon by Ms. Ashbell. The city has never addressed that and totally ignores it in their argument. Further, according to MCL 125.3101 at SEC, the Zoning Enabling Act, if the use of a dwelling, building, or structure of the land is lawful at the time of enactment of a zoning ordinance or an amendment to the zoning ordinance, then that use may be continued, although it does not conform to the zoning ordinance or amendment. In short, it's a grandfather clause. The city is entirely ignoring state law of the grandfathering clause. Further, passage of time alone, even if the city could prove 1 year of abandonment, which it cannot, that alone, the passage of time is not enough to establish a nonconformity. According to Michigan State University Law School, that does not work no matter how much time has passed. To consider a nonconformity to be stopped, one has to consider many different factors, and one of these factors is intention, as I've already said. The issue of abandonment, if you're going to look at a legal definition, requires some overt act or some failure to act, which carries the implication that the owner neither claims nor obtains any interest in the subject matter of the abandonment. That does not exist here. And an intention to abandon or relinquish the nonconformity. That does not exist here. You cannot prove either leg of this two-pronged legally required law. There are only two ways a nonconformity can end under state law. MCL 2013.21 at SEC. It comes to an end if the local government purchases a nonconformity. That hasn't happened. And if the property owner chooses to stop the nonconformity. Further, there must be some public use in the city's attempt to correct the nonconformity. There is no public use that we can think of that's being served here. So in conclusion, you've shown no evidence at all that this has been abandoned for a year. Even if you could establish a 1 year abandonment period, which you cannot, you've totally ignored the intent to abandon requirement by your own ordinance. Even if you could prove those 2 points, you have totally ignored Michigan's grandfathering statute. You cannot, to my knowledge, that we can think of, demonstrate any viable public purpose being served by your wanting to enforce the current amendment of the zoning ordinance. As far as the nonconformity of the second driveway being stone, again, I would challenge Mr. Murphy to prove that such an ordinance was in existence 63 years ago. Finally, I am requesting on behalf of my client reimbursement of the $700 filing fee because she could have taken this directly to the zoning administrator for resolution. Now, as far as evidence that she has not abandoned the property, we have several points to make, which I've included in a letter, but do you want to read that or you want me to read that? Okay. She uses it every week to pull out her trash. And by the way, your ordinance does not say must be used with a car. There is no such requirement. I use it every week to pull out my trash. I have handymen come in through the second drive to service my backyard and trees. Handymen often access my shed for lawn and snow removal equipment. I get to my weeds as I can. I am now 88. With all the early spring and summer rain, it was hard to keep up with. Why would I spend $700 to fight it if I didn't want it? Yes, I have a portable composter in the drive, but it is easily moved if I need to. I have a shared driveway with my neighbor with a tree encroaching on my drive. And so I don't have full primary use or use of the primary driveway. The family, her family often uses the second drive to access items in the shed. So we also have Mr. Tom Dunstan here who would like to make a statement.
Hello, commissioners.
Speak up.
My name is Tom Dunstan and my address is 302 Woodlawn Avenue. Concerning case number 210730, where the city is seeking to remove a second driveway approach on the property of Mrs. Catherine Ashbaugh because of no variance on file. Okay, the city is out of bounds, trying to enforce a new rule on an obviously established and permissible property feature. Mrs. Ashbaugh and the guy across Glendale from her, who happens to be me, are in the same argument with the city concerning this second driveway approach, which we insist we paid for when we paid for the paving of Glendale. My suggestion to the city to preserve the city's good name: return Mrs. Ashbaugh $700. Recognize that the city accepted the extra driveways decades ago with the paving of Glendale. No variance demand should develop out of thin air. The city's argument should not have been unfairly broadened with remarks of non-hard surface and unimproved being used to support and expand an erroneous initial complaint by the city. Thank you.
I would also like to add,
After his son.
I would also like to add
And
that
now Abraham called the name of that place Yahweh Yireh, that is to say, on the mount of the
What the
Lord,
heck?
there is sight. This is beautiful. On the mount,
Miss Fabian,
on the mount of the
Hold
Lord.
it's
on.
coming from yours.
Sort of.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there, but I would also add that Mr. Tom Dunstan's not paying the $700 to appeal does not equal consent. He has another avenue, which I have advised him to talk to the zoning board administrator. So it is not a done deal. With that, I rest.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fabian. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Ms. George.
So one of the arguments that's made on Ms. Ashbaugh's behalf is that there's an encroachment on her primary driveway, but I'm not sure why that's relevant because again, she's not using the back driveway to park on. The encroachment, she's still using that driveway her primary driveway to drive on. She's asking to keep the back driveway for all the other things she wants to use. And I know that you mentioned, Ms. Fabian, that the ordinance doesn't say that a driveway must be used for a car. And so it doesn't need to be paved. And I don't even think that's really the argument here because like Mr. Murphy said earlier, when I asked, we're not making Miss Ashbaugh do anything. We just want to the city just wants to put a curb up where there's an apron, but under Ordinance 66-13, trailers and recreational vehicles have to be parked on an asphalt or concrete driveway. But again, I don't see the city compelling Ms. Ashbaugh to do anything or incur any fines about that. It's just putting up a curb. So I don't know how things like the encroachment on her primary driveway or the travel trailer creates any undue hardship.
Well, again, I would say that there was no ordinance requiring a hard surface on a second driveway 63 years ago. Mr. Murphy has stated to the contrary, but provides no ordinance citation. It's just an opinion. As far as the tree encroachment is concerned, even if you threw that factor out, all of my other points remain valid.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Moore, Mr. Gavin, then back to Ms. George.
Yeah, my question maybe is more for Mr. Murphy. I keep hearing about abandonment. Was there something that wasn't in our packet about abandonment? Because I just searched through our materials also, and I'm not really seeing a reference to anything being stated about abandonment of that driveway.
Correct. Our report does not state anything with regard to abandonment. That's the petitioner's argument or crafting their argument or defense or basis to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gavin?
I was just curious because, and I'm just a little confused on timeline. So the driveway, I think there's multiple references to 63 years. Is that when the driveway was installed, or is that when Miss Ashbaugh purchased the property? And
you were
go
in the
ahead.
house. When we bought the house, it had 2 driveways. And
Okay.
that was 3 years ago. Okay, and how long did the prior owner have it? 4 or 5 years. All right, did you hear
Okay.
that?
Yep, that answers my question. Thank you. I was just curious about that.
Okay.
Ms. George?
Also,
I don't think I remember my question. That's okay. I think I got what I need to understand this.
All right. Anyone, Ms. Robinson?
Yeah.
This is, could you you have an RV parked in the backyard and it looks like it came in off the second driveway. But if you did not have that second driveway, would you still be able to take that RV into your backyard using your primary driveway?
No. Okay. Also, Ms. George alluded to the fact that you aren't forcing her to put a hard surface on the second driveway. However, one of the commissioners stated that, I think it was Mr. George or Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry, Mr. Murphy, that if the variance were granted, then the city would cite her for not having a hard surface. So it is relevant to this conversation.
Ms. George?
But that would mean if the variance that you're requesting was granted, you've kind of made that situation for yourself or Ms. Ashbaugh for herself.
Well, according to the current zoning ordinance. But again, I challenge Mr. Murphy to produce a zoning ordinance to that effect 63 years ago. This should all be grandfathered in.
Mr. Gavin.
I was just hoping Mr. Murphy could clarify on that. 'Cause that was not my understanding of what Mr. Murphy stated. So, maybe we could just get it straight from the horse's mouth.
If the variance request is granted tonight, nothing will change. The petitioner will not be required to install a hard surface driveway off of Glendale, and the existing drive approach in the public right of way will remain. This is if the board grants the variance request, it's the formal recognition of the non-conforming circumstance. The board will have granted the variances necessary for it to be recognized from here on out. The situation is above and beyond the ordinance provisions, but the board has granted the necessary variances.
My client wants to make an additional statement.
I don't believe back then that there would be an ordinance that it had to be, that it couldn't be gravel. Both of the streets, when I bought that house, were not paved. It was a long time before Glendale was paved. They oiled it for years and years and years. So they certainly weren't going to care about my driveway. So you got to maybe check into that, how long those streets have been paved.
Okay, but Mr. Murphy is saying that won't be an issue if the variance is approved tonight.
Mr. Clamp.
Just kind of follow up to Mr. Murphy's comment about if it is approved, but if it's not approved, the city will pay for the new curb, the sod in the right of way, and will not enforce the patch of gravel can remain in the rear yard as is.
That's correct. There would be no formal action.
Thank you.
So I need clarification. If the variance is approved, will you cite Ms. Ashbaugh for a non-conforming hard surface?
No.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Zukin.
My question is for Mr. Murphy. Did the engineering department express any reason why they wanted to curb that other than the fact that it was a second driveway and they could?
Correct. There's been a more concerted effort to be bringing, after public improvement projects happen in areas, to try and bring compliance with current ordinance requirements. Engineering division in their design recognized that the petitioner had their primary driveway on Glendale that led to a drive approach that led to their concrete driveway adjacent to their house, and that this was the secondary driveway that's non-compliant. So the original design showed this curb or this drive approach on Glendale being removed. We extended the courtesy to let the property owner know that if they wanted to keep the drive approach that accessed their property off of Glendale, that they did in fact need to come in front of the board tonight to seek the variance in order to keep the circumstance exactly how it is.
Yeah, and according to state law, the nonconformity requires, or trying to rectify the nonconformity requires a public purpose. What is the public purpose here? Other than a project, which isn't a public purpose.
Ms. Fabian, thank you. Any other question, Mr. Moore?
Yes, this is probably another one for Mr. Murphy. I know we've been pretty consistent on the more than one driveway issue, and we have had some petitioners who have come back with revised plans showing what were two driveways connected in some form or another. Would this be an issue if they had some type of connection between the two separate driveways that they have right now?
I would say that if they tried to make some type of connection from one street to another via a continuous paved hard surface driveway on their private property, no, that would not meet any particular ordinance provision of like a horseshoe shaped driveway that you might be thinking of. It would not meet that provision, no.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right, is there any other questions for the petitioner? We can always come back to the board and just talk to Mr. Murphy, but I'm just wondering, is there any more for the petitioner?
Well, I think it would be one appropriate question for the petitioner would be the fact that we have 8 board.
Yes, I was going to get to that
Okay,
after verifying there was no more petitioner questions. Anyone else? All right. As Mr. Murphy alluded to, we do not have a full board. We have only 8 out of 9. But you need 5 positive affirmative votes to pass an ordinance when we're variance. Do you wish to proceed or do you wish to delay another month where we might have a full board or we may not?
I would recommend they decide tonight. What about you?
I know if one person's gonna make a difference. I don't want to drag out this. It's gonna be difficult.
Okay. She wants it decided tonight.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will bring it back to this side of the board. If there's any comments or any further questions, Mr. Murphy, or any proposals regarding the variance one way or another. Ms. Robinson.
I'm of the mind to grant this. I too live on a house that has kind of a shared driveway or side to side driveway. And just from the pictures, I'd kind of like to know what the width of that driveway is. From the pictures, it looks like that's pretty narrow. And that she's saying the reason for that second driveway was that you couldn't get things into that backyard off of that primary driveway. And it has been there forever and the neighbors all seem to be okay with it. My thought is to say it's okay.
Any other comments or motion? Mr. Reddy and then Mr. Gavin. Mr. Reddy.
Well, if Mr. Gavin has a comment, I was going to make a motion. Did you have a comment first?
Go.
I was actually going to make a motion, so you can go first.
Well, I move that we approve both requests.
Is there a second to Mr. Reddy's motion? Mr. Gavin. Recognized. Go ahead, Mr. Reddy.
Oh, okay. Well, I just going through the 4 points. I think that, there's a practical difficulty and lack of this driveway would prevent the owner from accessing their backyard, especially with the RV, but in other ways as well. I mean, I think that side driveway is sort of blocked and narrow. And then the second item is that the variance would do substantial justice to the applicant. And we've heard from neighbors who feel that it would do justice for them as well. C, the plight of the landowner is due to unique circumstances of the property. I think the width and the way the driveway is laid out are unique circumstances and that's probably why this driveway has been there for 60 years. And D, the alleged hardship has not been created by the owners or the applicant. So I think all are satisfied and we should approve.
Mr. Gavin.
Just to chime in on that a little further, I agree with Mr. Reddy's comments. But I know we've had a few second driveway issues come up recently. This one, I think, is, I know our previous decisions are not binding or precedential in any way, but this one's a little different to me just because of the fact that it's been in existence for so long and has continued to be in use. So that's the main reason that I'm okay with allowing this one to continue. So I'm in favor.
Other comments? Mr. Moore?
Yes, I'm gonna vote in favor of this one as well. I think, with the driveways being the way they were before she bought the home, and when the street was paved, the city acknowledged it at that time by putting in the drive approach as concrete. And so she's had use of it all of this time. And it's not like she installed her own approach or anything. So that's just my comments on that.
Anyone else? Mr. Gavin?
Just one follow-up that I forgot I wanted to mention was I believe our purview of this board is only to approve or deny variances. I don't believe we have any authority to refund fees. So unfortunately, I don't think we can address that tonight. That's not something we have the ability to do.
Any other comments? All right. I will be in support of this motion. Unlike possibly the neighbor across the street at 302, which seems to have 3 driveways, of which 2 are access to their garage. and the one isn't. This one, she does not have a garage, and normally on a corner lot, you would have a garage of that back one, and which is why it probably was there in the first place. And the one in the front off of Woodlawn was probably just expanded at one point. So to my thought process, this is more of a unique circumstance, and should someone want to put in a garage, it'd be easier to access it off that the Glendale route than the Woodland, since that approach is so narrow to access it. So between that and everything else that's been brought up, I'm in support of this variance. All right, no other discussion. We'll call for a vote. Ms. George?
No.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Reddy?
Yes.
Ms. Zukin?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Clapp?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. Well, congratulations. The motion has passed as requested.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Is that it?
Yep.
All right.
Very much.
We will move on to our next case. Case number 21-07-31 at 1524 Catalpa. Whenever you have it ready, Mr. Murphy, you may take it away.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see. Going to make sure the petitioner is in the meeting. We're going to start your case now. The subject property, I'm going to switch over to sharing my screen. The subject property is located at the corner of Catalpa and Oak Ridge. It contains a 1.5-story house with a detached garage that's accessed off of Oak Ridge. And the petitioner is proposing to construct a 2-story addition to the rear of the dwelling. So the addition would cover the backside of the house, almost the entire backside of the house. Due to the orientation of the property to the north and the property to the east, this corner lot is required to have a setback along Catalpa equivalent to the house to the east, and they're required to have a setback along Oak Ridge equivalent to the house to the north. Obviously, you can see from the aerial photograph on the screen in front of you that the house on Oakdale has a setback that's further than the existing house, the subject property's existing house and their existing garage. So the existing structures on the site are non-conforming. And I'm going to switch over to their drawings to give you an illustration of what they hope to accomplish. That's the view looking north on Oak Ridge. That is a view from the vantage point of the house to the north. So again, the one that's the required setback along Oak Ridge. And the petitioner is proposing to, whoops. The petitioner is proposing to construct a rear yard addition, and that's nicely illustrated here with that hatched outline. So it's a rear yard addition to create a full second story and to add additional ground floor area. Obviously, that addition is a little more than 10 feet off of setback off of the Oak Ridge right of way, and they're required again to be much further. They're required to be equivalent to that house to the north, which is 25.4 feet. Or rather, excuse me, that the house to the north is 35.4 feet. So they're seeking a variance in order to construct that addition within the required setback along Oak Ridge. And we'll refer to their elevations to give you an understanding of just what they're proposing to accomplish. Again, the outline of the existing house, 1.5 stories, and what they're proposing to create a full second story and additional ground floor area to the rear of the house. We did receive one written correspondence, which is attached to the online report for the board's consideration, and that is from the property owner to the north. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and see if the board members have any questions before we the board has any questions for the petitioners.
Anyone have a question? Yep, Ms. George.
So the orientation of the house to the north is perpendicular to the subject property in question, right?
Yes, correct. I'll bring it up on the screen again. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Just get a clear understanding. So the outline in red is the subject property. This is Oak Ridge Avenue, the side street, and this is the house to the north. You'll see their front yard setback, 35.4 feet, and all the existing structures on the currently on the property are non-conforming.
Got it.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing none, the petitioner, please introduce yourself, and you guys can go ahead and present your case.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Skrinsky, and this is my wife Kirsten.
Hi.
So basically, just to give you a little background about why we wanted to do the addition is, we're hoping to expand our family a little bit, and we wanted a somewhat larger house. Right now, our house is about 1,200 square feet, and we wanted to put about another 600 square feet onto it. So basically our choice was, stay here, which we really like this neighborhood and we'd like to raise our kids here, or move to a different house. So we chose to try to stay here and build this addition to give us a little more space. And a slightly bigger kitchen is one of the things that is going to be an important point later as well. But right now we have a very small kitchen. And you could, I don't know that you can really see that in the drawings, but it's a galley. Yeah, you can see from the drawings, currently about the middle of the house, where the existing house ends, between basically to the end of the stairway. So you see the stairway roughly in the middle of the house. That area just to the north of that stairway is basically our existing kitchen. So it's a little cramped in there. We'd like to expand it. And as you can see, it's on the west side. So, it doesn't make sense to necessarily move that. If we were to expand it, it wouldn't make sense to move it to a different part of the house. So,
the issue with the addition and the house itself is that on our lot, legally, we could only have a 9-foot house. But there's ordinances that require houses to be 20 feet. So not only is our existing house non-conforming, if we were to only add on 9 feet so that we have the setback that's required, you wouldn't even be able to add one room, let alone the full scope. And of course, moving a kitchen to the other side of the house would be much more expensive when you have to plumb things in and move electrical and all of that.
Yes, I was going to say that. So that to me, I think when you look at the 4 points we need to establish for our non-use variance, I think that hits on point C, that the circumstances of the property itself are causing this difficulty for us. As my wife pointed out, you'd need a house to be basically 9 feet wide to comply with the current ordinances, even though that in itself would be a violation of the 20-foot minimum width ordinance. And then obviously, just jumping to point D, we didn't draw the plot line. And under current ordinances, our plot should actually be 60 feet wide. And as you can see, the sidewalk width is 50, making the actual, perpendicular width to the street a little less than 50. We do feel this is kind of unreasonably prevents us from using the house as it would be permitted, because we feel the house is, it's a reasonable structure. It would be like a 30 by 40 foot structure. Again, probably, less than 2,000 square feet. It's very typical for other homes in the neighborhood. And it wouldn't really encroach on the sort of aesthetic character of the neighborhood. It wouldn't be inconsistent with other the look of other homes.
And of course, if you did notice in the picture, we currently have a deck off the back and an enclosed back porch. This new structure, this addition, is simply taking the place of that. We're not actually losing any lawn space technically, or very, very little. The actual aerial view of the house won't appear any larger with the new addition in comparison to what you see in the visual that was presented.
So, and then finally, so we obviously think this does justice to us, according to point B that we need to establish. Because again, if a lesser relaxation of this ordinance were granted, we would still have to relocate our kitchen, which would be prohibitively expensive. And we would probably opt to try to find a larger house, which would be really unfortunate. We would really hate to have to do that. And in terms of, justice to our neighbors, that might be a little esoteric, but if we're going to invest in our property, that common wisdom would dictate that will rise the property values of other homeowners in the area. And our neighbors across the street on Oak Ridge, they're the ones who actually have the clearest line of sight to the structure that would be constructed. They gave us their blessing verbally, and they actually I thought they had sent something into the city
Yes,
in our
that's
favor.
the people that you mentioned. That's actually our west neighbors, not our north neighbors.
Yeah.
And they actually did a similar addition on their house, and for some reason didn't need to seek a variance. So unfortunately, we were a little too late, and perhaps rules have changed by this time. But we're hoping that it will be granted for obvious reasons.
So that about covers what we wanted to say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the petitioners? All right. I guess you guys did a great job. We'll pull it back to this side of the board. Before we discuss, though, as you may notice, we don't have a full board in front of us. We have 8 out of 9 people. You do need 5 affirmative votes to pass a variance. Do you wish us to proceed, or do you want to wait a month?
I think we want to just get it over with.
All right, then we will pull it to this side and is there any discussion and or motions? Mr. Gavin?
I move to approve the variances.
Is there a second? Mr. Klatt? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
I don't even think I really need to go through the factors very much. I think the petitioner covered them pretty well, and I agree completely. And I just want to add that your situation is my exact situation. I am on a corner lot, and if we ever expand our house, we're going to have to get exactly the same variance. So, I feel your pain.
Mr. Klatt.
I think practical difficulty has been proven here, and there's a 35.4-foot setback. It's a pretty severe penalty on a 55-foot lot. So that's practical difficulty itself. And I think it's a nice, modest addition to help modernize your home for your growing family. I think it'll have no negative impact to the neighborhood, and I support it. So great job.
Any other comments? All right. I too will support for all the previous statements. And if there's no other comments, we will go ahead, motion to vote, or we'll move to vote, I should say. Ms. Zukin, I'll go with you first this time.
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Reddy?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
And I also will vote yes. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is passed unanimously. And then we have one final, one final one for this page. Man, we got a lunch. 21-0732, 116 Kaiser Avenue. Mr. Murphy, whenever you are ready.
I'll go ahead and ask Mr. Gordon, do you have all of your, is Matt with you, the property owner?
The owner's right here.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. I see other people in the waiting room that are unidentified, so I want to make sure he's with you. I'm going to put you back on mute and go through the report.
Very good.
So the subject property is located on Kaiser. It's just south of East 11 Mile Road, and it contains a 2-story single-family home with a front entry garage. And the petitioner, as you can see on the aerial photograph, the petitioner has a hard surface concrete patio off the backside of their house in the rear yard. And they're looking to expand the home by constructing a 1-story addition with living space, and that there is an extended roof line which not only accommodates that 1-story additional living space, but it also creates an unenclosed covered porch. The property currently has a total lot coverage of 24%. And the addition, the roof line again, which covers the additional living space and the covered porch, that whole roof line pushes the property over the maximum allowable lot coverage at 30%. It brings it to 34.1%. So the petitioner is seeking the opportunity to go above and beyond the total lot coverage to allow for the expansion. And I'm going to bring that up on the screen. And of course, Mr. Gordon can explain it better. But this is the floor plan that he's created for his client to illustrate the additional living space as well as the covered porch for outdoor entertainment. We did not receive any written or audio comment with regard to this variance request tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Mr. Devin.
Do we, and I don't know if you know this, but I'm sure that if you don't, Mr. Murphy, that the petitioner can answer it. Do we know the breakdown between the square footage that's living space versus the unenclosed portion between the two?
Yes, the living space is 470 square feet, and the unenclosed porch is an additional 320 square feet.
So I guess what because
that 4.1% is what you get now. What number square footage is that? Yes, and that is, and I should have provided this statement in the report versus you having to ask it. But 4.1% equates to 317 square feet, or just under the enclosed, the unenclosed covered porch portion.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing none, the petitioner, please introduce yourself and you may go ahead and present your case.
There I am. Hi, I'm Mike Gordon, the architect. With me is Matt Cornelius, the homeowner, and Evan, who's on my staff. As it was noted, it's basically the covered unenclosed space is the difference in the 300 and some square feet. It should be noted that all other setbacks, lot restrictions, and building codes are met or exceeded. The lot is unique in its position on the street. It's the first residential lot and abuts a commercial zoning, and primarily the parking lot of those developed lots. We designed the addition and covered entertaining space along the property line adjacent to the commercial property. This solves two issues. It minimizes the impact that these additions would have on the adjoining residential properties to the south and west, and currently the property to the west is vacant. It also acts as a screen to block some of the owner's yard from the commercial property activity. Further, the current zoning ordinance and city code has language that is somewhat open to interpretation as to whether outdoor covered open entertainment spaces do actually count towards the lot coverage. To further minimize the impact of the addition on adjoining residents, the addition was kept to 1 story with a very low profile roof line and a very tiny and contemporary look of the home. We know that last year has changed how people live in their homes. Seasonal entertainment areas that are covered to help extend the season are one of the most sought after additions that we've been doing for the last year. And I've also already appeared before you with a very similar request this year, and will be appearing probably at next month's meeting with one very similar. We think this is a reasonable solution that solves the client's needs, addresses any concerns that the community might have, and it will be an asset to the property. And we will answer any questions and hope you look favorably at comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioner? No questions? Oh, Mr. Clapp.
Just one quick question. The pizza oven I noticed on the plan, does that have a vent pipe that it protrudes to the roof, or is that as designed without a vent?
Go back to this. Go back to that. Is there an elevation? It has, no, it's self-contained.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's electric.
Any other questions for the Ms. Zukin?
Just for clarification, the entire addition you're calling porch, part of it is enclosed and part of it is not enclosed?
Correct. Yes. And the part that's not enclosed is the part that's over the lot coverage.
Any other questions? I just have one quick one, Mr. Murphy, that I thought of before, or didn't think of before until now. And I know we've talked about it in the past, but just to remind everyone, that if we granted this, that covered porch could get enclosed in the future because it's been granted, correct? Or would that have to then come back before us for a separate variance?
No, we wouldn't bring it back for a separate variance. It meets all the other, or what we refer to as bulk and area provisions in the zoning ordinance. It meets the setbacks. This is the only necessary variance, whether it's enclosed or unenclosed. So we would have no objection to enclosing it or not. It's essentially the same thing. It's a same roof line, same footprint.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to reiterate it again. Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? All right. Seeing as we do not have a full board in front of us, we have 8 out of 9. Do you wish for us to proceed or try your luck at next month for a full board? You need 5 to get it.
We're willing to move forward. 8, well, it was better than the one with 2. So.
All right. Thank you. We'll pull it back to this side of the board. Is there any discussion and or motion? Mr. Gavin. You're muted.
All right. Yep. So I move to approve the variance as requested.
Is there a second? Mr. Clapp, seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
Yeah, as petitioner noted, we've been seeing more of these. I along with this one, similar to those before, I kind of view the unenclosed porch aspect as being a somewhat different, since it's not enclosed. It's not used as living space, per se, even though it can have potentially be enclosed later on. And even with that, it's a over only by a little bit. We're talking 4% here. That's not a major overage in my mind. So, given that the position of the property, and the use of the proposed expansion, I think this meets the 4 requirements.
Mr. Clapp.
Generally in favor, just due to the placement. I think the applicant and the architect were creative to place it on that side of the property, acts as a buffer to the commercial zone. So for that reason, I'll be in support.
Any other comments? All right, I'll make a comment. I'm sort of torn, although I do agree it does buffer the commercial side. More so, this is sort of a greenfield addition, in my opinion, not greenfield site ideally, but they could accomplish some stuff within that enclosed porch and have the covered porch not covered and have the enclosed more open or not open in different ways. And they're asking for more on the site than I think they could deal with just having the 30%. Yes, it makes a nicer feature and amenities, but that the practical difficulty is not there in my opinion. So, all right, if there's no other comments, we'll move to vote. We'll start off at the bottom this time. Mr. Gavin.
Aye.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
What? Okay. Ms. George.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
Mr. Klatt.
Yes.
Ms. Zukin.
Yes.
And I'll vote no. All right, your motion passes as you requested. Thank you very much. We will move on to our next page. Number 210733, 312 East 3rd Street. When you are ready, Mr. Murphy.
Uh-oh, I might be on. What happened? It's changed.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
We get the correct person. Blake, are you awaiting any other individuals to participate? I have some phone numbers in the waiting room that aren't identified.
The owner should be joining via computer.
Okay, and do you know? Oh, yes, I see. My apologies. Okay, so I will let you in and mute you both, and we'll go through the report, and then they'll have some questions for you.
Okay, thank
you. I'm going to go ahead and start. So the subject property is located directly across the street from City Hall and the Farmers Market. As shown on the screen, it's a two-story former house. It was more recently converted into a dentist's office and then later into a professional office. And in June of this year, the Planning Commission granted special land use and site plan approval for the petitioner to convert the structure into a two-family dwelling. And this is a vantage point from 3rd Street. The parking is accessed off of the alley. There are four parking spaces, and the site is 40 feet in width. As you can see, there is no driveway, clearly identified driveway in a normal sense. There is an apron that matches essentially the width of the property at the alley, and again, the site is 40 feet wide. The maximum allowable width for a driveway that's accessing the required parking in a commercial zone is 30 feet. So in this particular instance, the petitioner is looking to keep this circumstance keep the condition in the same circumstance that it is at 40 feet in width. So they do need a variance in order to have a driveway that's 10 feet wider than the maximum allowable, so that they may be able to access the 4 parking spaces off the alley that will serve the two-family dwelling. So they're seeking a waiver of 10 feet from that maximum driveway width of 30 feet for the two-family structure in a commercial zoning district. We did not receive any public comment, written or audio, with regard to this request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there any questions for Mr. Murphy at all? Ms. George?
So for a single family dwelling, the maximum width a driveway can be is 30 feet?
In a single family residential zone, it's 25.
Okay.
In a commercial zone, any commercial zone such as the downtown or Woodward Avenue, any of those types of zoning districts or locations, it's 30 feet.
And the building has been approved to be 2-unit. Sorry, is that the
Yes, correct. To be converted to a duplex, a 2-unit residential structure, and the planning commission granted that contingent upon the board granting this necessary variance of the width. The petitioner can highlight that, and I'll bring up their drawing. There's a difficulty in meeting the ordinance to provide the required 4 parking spaces and having, and I'm going to bring it up on screen. It'll help our conversation. There are 4 parking spaces located off of the alley, again at 40 feet in width is what they're proposing. Due to the maneuverability, there's really no physical way for them to be able to have a driveway width that's 30 feet on the alley and be able to turn into these parking spaces. More likely they would just back straight out over some type of grass area or curb in order to get to in and out from the alley. It's just the practicality of it is not something that can be accomplished with this design based on the circumstance.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, the petitioner, please introduce yourself and you may go ahead and present your case.
Good evening. My name is Blake Hatterman. I live at 2010 Roseland Avenue in Royal Oak, Michigan. I am the project architect for the property owner. We did receive site plan approval, special land use in June to convert this property to a 2-unit, 2-family dwelling. The owner's intent to use this property is to convert it to not necessarily residential units, but use it as an Airbnb. That was stated during the site plan approval process, and we think it's a great location for this, for that use, and a great property for that use as well. There are 4 parking spaces, as Mr. Murphy pointed out, in the rear of the property. The condition that we have now is that vehicles have to back straight out into the alley, which is not atypical for that location. I think there's around 8 or 10 other properties that share that same condition. And we would ask the board to let us continue to use the property in this manner. If we were forced to go to a 30-foot drive, it's likely that we would force ourselves into another variance regarding the number of parking spaces. So we were trying to avoid that. Secondly, if this was a new development, we would certainly want to conform with the current zoning ordinance. Again, with the parking the way it is here, with the cars backing directly onto the alley, the other item we'd like to point out is that we're not creating any hazard regarding pedestrian traffic. There isn't any encouragement for pedestrians to travel back and forth down the alley, and that this is again, this is going to be a transient use. So we think that we need as much parking as we do. 2 spaces for each unit would be appropriate for this, so that both of those units could be rented appropriately at the same time. So we would like to cite our existing conditions and hardship. We would like to just use the property as it is non-conforming and extend that, keeping traffic backing onto the alley. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have regarding this.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none. Before we bring it back here, we don't have a full board. We're down 1 person. So we have only 8, but you need 5 to pass affirmative votes. Do you wish for us to proceed, or do you want to wait another month?
We would wish to proceed right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll bring it back to this side of the board. Is there any discussion and or motion? Ms. Zukin.
Just by way of discussion, that used to be my dentist's office, and I parked back there all the time, and there was never a problem with pedestrians, as Mr. Blake stated. And this way it keeps people off 3rd Street. And it looks like it's metered parking there now. So this, to be a 2-family, it's going to need those 4 spaces.
Is there any questions? Mr. Clapp, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, is there a second? Mr. Moore seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Klatt.
I think practical difficulties already been proven. There's no other way to get the parking to work. So as a lesser of two evils, I'd rather have it right parked than to have the driveway the appropriate width. So for those reasons, vote to approve.
Okay. Mr. Moore, anything to add?
Yeah, just basically to Ms. Zukin's points, this has been like this for some time and there's not been any issues, so I don't see a reason to make them change that now.
Mr. Gavin.
I'm going to be in support of this as well, but I actually just had a quick question. I didn't know if anybody knows the answer. I meant to go and watch the planning commission meeting to see what Mr. Curtis thought about this, but I looked at the minutes and he actually was against this proposed land use. I was curious if anybody knew why, since that used to be his office. So I was just wondering.
Any other comments, Ms. Robinson?
I just wondered, like just looking at that much concrete and that's how hot that would be, like if they couldn't do something different, like some permeable pavement kind of thing or something that, I don't know, just a thought.
Any other comments regarding the motion? All right.
I would also, this is the owner, I'd also like to mention that we've had this commercial property for some time now, and the pandemic didn't help commercial properties as well. So we're trying to be creative. We are big believers in the city of Royal Oak, and that's why we're trying to convert this into something more attractive for the region, and considering how many good locations are there, and there are not any good Airbnb type of locations there. So I'd appreciate any support that the board can give towards approving this, because we've faced a lot of hardships.
Thank you. I'll be in support of this motion. I think practical difficulty has been stated, trying to fit 4 spaces into non 4 space spot with 30-foot driveway would just be impossible. So I have no problem with this. If there's no other comment, we'll move to vote. Ms. Zukin.
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
Mr. Gavin.
Yes.
Ms. George.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Klatt.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
And I too will vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. And we will move on to our next one. Case number 2108-34, 3701 Woodward Avenue. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Murphy.
Going to let the petitioners in the meeting and put them on mute as we start their cases.
Hello, this is Boris Houston.
Yes, Boris, I want to put you on mute and we're going to go through your item right now and then the board will have some questions for you.
Okay.
This site is located on Woodward Avenue. Many of you probably know it. It's the Basha building. The petitioner is proposing to construct a ground floor addition, and I'm going to share my screen, give you a better vantage point. This is the rear view of the building. This portion of the building is stilted. There's some ground floor medical office space, but there are some parking spaces underneath it. And the petitioner is proposing to expand the ground floor area underneath that portion of the building. The space is outlined in this hatched red area where there are currently 3 parking spaces. This area will be enclosed and it'll be an expansion dedicated to MRI medical examinations. The petitioner has been in front of the board before to expand portions of this building as well, and has been granted some variances. They currently, based on all of the different uses within the building, they're required to have 246 parking spaces. They have a total of 222 parking spaces. So they're currently slightly deficient. And this proposed expansion eliminates 3 parking spaces, and the floor area again is for MRI medical equipment. And based on the floor area, it requires 4 additional parking spaces. So again, eliminating 3, requiring 4, that equals a total of 7. So they're currently deficient, but they're looking to be deficient in a greater sum of 7 more parking spaces. So they are seeking a variance to waive 7 spaces of the total that they're required to provide on site of 250 parking spaces. We did receive 1 written comment for the board's consideration, and that is included in your online packet. And of course, the petitioner is here to describe their prior expansions for the MRI examinations, and yet again, another expansion based on their successful business.
Is there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Ms. Zukin and Mr. Clay.
I'm a little confused because the write-up says they need 250 spaces. They only have 222 now, so why aren't they looking for 31 as opposed to 7?
They've had some different variances granted in the past when they've expanded. So they're only required to seek a variance from the difference of what they currently have and what they're currently deficient, not what they're currently deficient in their totality, but from what they're trying to expand now. Again, they removed 3, they're required to have 4, that equals a total of 7. So they're only seeking to go above and beyond their current deficiency by 7 parking spaces. It's not the total of the difference of 222 versus 215. In fact, removal of the 3 parking spaces brings them further down to 219 parking spaces. But they're not required to seek a variance for something that in many instances they've received variances in the past. I don't recall, but I think in the report that we may have highlighted that they've received variance requests, I think on 3 other occasions to expand the ground floor medical office similar to this instance.
So the deficiencies were specifically granted before?
Yes, correct. Each time they were granted variances related to the deficiency for that expansion. So they've been in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for quite a few times. They are yet back again.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Clay.
I think I was on the board for one of those cases, I think I asked the same question back then too. Are there any documented or reported parking complaints from the surrounding properties or neighborhoods for this lot? Anything you might be aware of?
I have not heard of any in the last, I'm going to say, year and a half, with the current circumstances, and the petitioner can address the vacancy rate that they may or may not have with their professional office, because there is a fair amount of professional office in that building. Perhaps they have some vacancies which have obviously would then relate to fewer people coming to park at the site as employees. What the city typically receives complaints at are people parking on the streets nearby. However, from my personal experience, the instances that I've gone to the site or nearby, people are parking on the street due to the fact that they are going or work at other locations nearby. This particular property owner does have many signs posted, because they have the largest parking lot in the area, informing people that unless you're here for business at this particular property, you're not allowed to park on this site. So the parking complaints that we do receive generally revolve around people parking in the street. And again, my experience is that those are customers or employees of other businesses nearby.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Reddy.
Yeah, I had a question for Mr. Murphy. So the calculation of spaces, is that like, is the formula updated on an ongoing basis? And is it adjusted for public transit? Like, there's a very convenient bus service that services this building. So I'm just curious if it's adjusted for that.
It is not. We've talked about in the master plan, if there was a greater mass transit effort, that we would look very seriously at reducing parking rates within a certain distance of that. But our current transit system, we haven't factored that in the ordinance. If you're so many feet from a stop, we don't have any calculations like that in the ordinance. And we do look at ordinance provisions periodically. We did reduce the amount of parking for medical floor, medical office space. The city did adopt an ordinance amendment to reduce that amount of parking, probably about 15 years ago would be my guess, if I can remember, and that was a significant drop. You had a question?
Yeah, just a follow-up. If that was 15 years ago, ride-sharing services were probably not prevalent at that time, correct?
Very true.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing none, the petitioner may introduce themselves and present their case.
Hi, this is Boris Ustan on behalf of Dr. Basha. Dr. Basha did text me while he was listening to you guys speak about his case, and he did ask if he could be included in on the meeting if possible.
Sure, Boris. Can you tell me, I don't see him listed in a name in the waiting room. Does his phone number end in 1600?
His cell number is 613-5936.
I don't see that listed in the waiting room. If you can give him the link and he can join, I'll see him in the waiting room and we can admit him.
Okay, I will ask him to do so. Okay, so while I asked him to call back in, so I will begin. So the reason that we are looking to do this on the ground level is the nature of the machine. Being an MRI machine, it's not something that can easily be put on a second floor or a third floor for various reasons. It is a powerful machine. It vibrates quite vigorously. So the only place to really have an MRI machine is on the ground level. One thing that you may have noticed is in the back corner of Dr. Basha's parking lot, he does have 2 parking spots that are currently home to a bunch of masonry block that we will be using to construct this addition. And one of the gentlemen on the board mentioned the ride-sharing service. So in the past, Dr. Basha has offered a convenient service to his clients for the elderly or handicapped. He would offer free shuttle service back and forth. So he would have numerous vehicles at his facility to do that. Now with the Uber and Lyft, all those people that he was shuttling before are now using this service. So he has no longer shuttles patients, freeing up some spots as well. He did, there was one mention about people working remotely. A good chunk of his staff that do dictation and some accounting and payroll, they have moved off-site, so they are able to work remotely. In talking with Dr. Basha, the use of this space, we have one technician that monitors the patient, and there is about, the MRI average is about 1 patient per hour. is how that works. We've done numerous renovations for Dr. Basha over the years, and I did take a few photos over the summer of the parking lot. And in all my times there, which have been well over 100, I have never seen that parking lot at capacity. So those are some of the things that we wanted to share. And probably the most pressing is the ability to have that MRI unit on the ground level.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I'm just curious here. The MRI equipment is being used in some fashion right now, correct? Like this isn't preventing it from being used. Is this just additional space that's required, or just something that's necessary for this type of equipment?
He is adding a third machine. So we have 2 machines there currently. This is adding a third machine due to there's high demand. Dr. Basha offers very reasonable rates when compared to other facilities. And he has these babies going from dawn till dusk. And he has patients that he's unable to see because he doesn't have the machines to do it. So this would help him increase his business, allow more patients to get MRIs and not have to wait as long.
Okay, thank you. I guess I didn't realize it was an additional machine, and thanks.
Yeah, so in the proposed addition, the where you can see the MRI and that funny looking thing across the diagonal, that is the room that houses the MRI. And then the room just below that is where all the MRI equipment goes.
All right, any other questions for the petitioner? All right, before we bring it back to this side, just wanted to remind you, we do not have a full board tonight. We only have 8 out of 9 people, so we're missing 1 person. You need 5 affirmative votes for the variance to pass. Would you like us to go forward, or do you want to risk pushing it a month and we get a full board then?
I feel our case is, I'm willing to move forward, yes.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back to this side of the board. Is there any discussion and or motion? Anyone? Mr. Moore.
I will make a motion to approve. I think they still have quite a bit of parking available.
Well,
there.
before discussion, is there any second?
Go ahead.
Mr. Reddy, seconds. Go ahead. Mr. Moore, you may continue.
Yeah, I think there's still plenty of parking there, and the fact that they have signs regulating that the parking is for their facility only, I think it's probably adequate by today's standards.
Mr. Reddy, would you like to?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd like to just add on that. So I think the practical difficulty is, for preventing the owner from using it to treat more patients, like they're at capacity, and this restriction is preventing them from treating more patients who need care. And I think, as Mr. Murphy said, the formula's from 15 years ago, so we know people use ride-sharing apps, public transportation, and other things. Like the Fast Bus has really good service up and down Woodward. So I think this would provide justice in this case. So I'm in favor.
Sorry, any other comments? Sugan.
Oh, I shouldn't admit this, but I drive through that parking lot a lot, and I've never seen it at full capacity. And this has been even before COVID, which is, reduced the amount of parking necessary.
Any other comments? Well, I too will be in favor of this, although I am getting concerned that with each addition, they are getting closer and closer to a breaking point. I think you're still fine, especially with the mobility options that are out there and maybe even change in the future. Definitely from my architecture experience, I do agree that you either have to put that MRI on the ground floor or you got to have it on a nice solid upper floor, and they aren't able to do that with their current building. So I can understand where they're going at with this addition and just how much associated equipment is taken up by that MRI machine itself. So I don't have any problem with supporting this. If there's no other discussion, we will move to vote. This time we'll start at the bottom. Ms. George.
Yes.
Mr. Klatt.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson. You're muted.
So sorry, yes.
Mr. Gavin.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
Ms. Zukin.
Yes.
And I too will vote yes, so that's unanimous again. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we will move on to our next one.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's see. Case number 2108 35 326 Baker Street. Ooh, so close to Sherlock Holmes. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Murphy.
Okay, this site is located on the east side of Baker between 11 Mile and Sherman. It contains, as you can see on the screen in front of you, a one-story single-family home and a detached garage. The petitioner is proposing to construct a full second-story addition that's in line with the existing exterior walls. I'm going to jump to the petitioner's sketch, which provides an illustration of the adjacent properties and their setbacks that's relevant to the variance that's required. The petitioners provided some documentation to note that the house to the north and the house to the south, they have front yard setbacks of averaging 18.5 feet. And the petitioner's existing front yard setback is the same. The zoning ordinance requires at least a minimum of 25 feet. These are some older homes that may have had a different standard at a different point in time, but the current ordinance provision requires no less than 25-foot front yard setback, and that's measured to the nearest point of living space, be it ground floor or second story. With the petitioner's second story addition that again is in line with the front of the house, that second story addition would maintain a non-conforming 18.5-foot front yard setback. They're not proposing to step back the second story. It would be in line. So they do need a variance in order to expand the non-conforming structure in a non-conforming manner and to waive 6.5 feet of that minimum required 25-foot setback. Because the house is situated closer to the street, it also needs a variance request related to the unenclosed front porch and steps that they're proposing to add to the front of the house. At its nearest point, an unenclosed front porch and steps can be no closer than 18 feet from the front property line. Again, because the house is placed closer to the front yard setback to begin with, the petitioner's proposed front porch and steps would only measure 6.8 feet from the front yard setback. So they are seeking a variance to waive the distance requirement for the unenclosed front porch and steps. I'll go through some of the other drawings as well that the petitioner's provided. And the petitioner can certainly describe for you what they propose to do, but you'll see the second story, the roof line overhangs a little bit into the front yard setback, but measured to the nearest point of living space, that second floor is marked at 18.5 feet. And again, the front porch and steps require the variance to project out further. We did not receive any public comment, audio or written, with regard to this particular variance request.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there any questions for Mr. Murphy at all? Ms. Sukin.
Is the front porch that the petitioner is proposing the same distance from the lot line as the other houses north and south of it?
Let's take a look at their drawings, and then they can certainly describe that. And we've got some photographs as well that I think will help. No, that their drawing does not illustrate the distance of the house to the north and the house to the south. It does not indicate the distance from the front property line to those front porches. But I'm going to bring up on the screen for you the photographs, and it'll give you at least some perspective as to the relationship. The subject property is hovering over it. You can see the house to the north, and you'll see the house to the south. Those two appear to have similar sized front porch and steps. Again, I don't know what the distance is. Perhaps the petitioner can give you some indication.
Yeah, the two dwelling properties. Oh, sorry.
Hold on a second. We'll get to you shortly.
My apologies.
That's okay. Okay. Any other questions for, yes, Mr. Klatt?
I'll just kind of chime in. Not that Google Earth is exact by any means. They do look like they're pretty much in line for a quick review and the tape measure tool that it provides. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Seeing none, okay. We'll have the petitioner please introduce yourself, and then you may go ahead and state your case.
Hello, my name is Joe Gardner. My wife, Natalie Gardner, is not able to join me since I'm currently at work still on overnights. But yeah, as far as the dwelling properties to us, there are some older homes, like Mr. Murphy stated, and they are really much in line as far as the front doors and then also the front porches as well. Which was something that I kind of wanted to keep when we did all of the plan drawings. We liked the consistency of the street with all of the houses that were built, I believe, in 1913, most of them, to keep them all in line. And then just wanted to add the second story because we plan on expanding our family here shortly. So we just needed some extra space in the area because we really love the Royal Oak area, the city. A lot of families are moving into the area and also the street as well. So we wanted to keep all 4 walls that are currently there and just go ahead and remove the roof and add a second story to add some bedrooms.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, before we go ahead and bring it this side, there's only 8 out of 9 people here for the board, so we're missing 1 person, but you need 5 people for affirmative votes. So you can either elect to go forward or delay for another month, which you may or may not still have a full board at that point.
Yeah, I would elect to move forward today.
All right, we'll bring it to this side. Is there any discussion and or motion? Anyone? Mr. Gavin first.
I'll move to approve the variances as requested.
Is there a second? Mr. Klatt seconds. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
Considering that they're keeping all of the non-conforming expansions in line with the current house, and it just unless it's really well designed, I think it would look very awkward to not have it in line with the current walls of the house. So given that it's an expansion like that and that it's in conformance with the neighboring properties, it's going to do justice both to maintain the appearance in the neighborhood as well as to the homeowners so that they can get the expansion that they want, and without and along with that, it's not a problem that they created, because the house has existed there since apparently over 100 years now, yeah, I think that about covers it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Klatt, anything to add?
I think Mr. Gavitt summed it up well. The only thing I can add is maybe that the porch meets the spirit of the ordinance and the fact that it's less than 7 feet as designed. So I think it's a good plan.
Any other comments? All right. I too agree with everything that's been stated and the practical difficulties that are involved. So I will also be in support of this motion. We'll move on to voting. Ms. Sukin.
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Gavin.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Klatt.
Yes.
Ms. George.
Yes.
And I too will vote yes. Unanimous passes. Thank you very much. We will move on to the next one. 2 to go. Number 21-08-36 for 31542 and 31626 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Murphy, whenever you are ready.
If I could ask for a slight recess, I think that may help some of us. It will also help me bring the next petitioner into the meeting, which we're experiencing some difficulties with.
All right.
So
We will do, how about this 5-minute recess? Start back up in 5 minutes at 9:07.
Hi, I'm Officer Corey Steers, and it's time to test your knowledge of bicycle law. True or false? Motorists are never allowed to drive or park cars in designated bike lanes. True. Motorists are never allowed in bike lanes, period. When there is not a bike lane, motorists have to allow 3 feet of clearance when passing a bike. With increased interest in biking in Royal Oak and across the region, it is everyone's responsibility to keep our streets safe. Know the law.
Well, Mike, I think we'll move on to the next case and we'll come back to you. I will keep my eyes open for the waiting room, and if I see either Evan or Matt Brown in the waiting room, I will be successful and we'll come back to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, fine. We have to be here.
Okay, so we will move.
I don't know.
Okay, so Mr. Murphy will move on to 21-08.
Correct. Yep, I'm just going to mute them, and we'll for the next case, we're going to move on to admin. We're having some technical difficulties with the case on Woodward Avenue, so I'm going to unmute the next series of petitioners just to inform them that we are going to discuss their case, and we'll come back to the one on Woodward Avenue. Our apologies. So the next case is on Edmond Avenue. And I'm going to share my screen and go through the report, and then the petitioner will have the opportunity to provide their comments for the board. This site may look familiar to some board members. The petitioner has acquired several properties on Edmond near the corner of Bellevue. And there are some homes that are constructed and one that is under construction. The current one that is under construction, I'm hovering over right now. It says it's a little older, so it says future house, but it's under construction. The petitioner acquired the property to the east. They divided that property into 2 buildable sites, and they ultimately want to build a future house and a future house. The petitioner did receive a variance request from the minimum required front yard setback to build these 2 houses that I'm hovering over. The petitioner next wants to construct, again, a house in this location. They need to have a minimum front yard setback equal to the closest home, which is the one under construction, the one I'm hovering over, and the existing house at 503. The house that's under construction has a front yard setback measured to the cantilevered second floor of 29.7 feet. And the house at 503 Edmond has a front yard setback of 38 feet, of 46.6 feet. So when we average those two out, the petitioner to construct a new home, again, in this location on the vacant lot, lot 20, they need to have a minimum front yard setback of 38 feet. And the petitioner is proposing to construct an identical house to the one he has under construction. That front yard setback, 29.7 feet. So the petitioner is seeking a variance to waive 8.3 feet of the minimum required 38-foot front yard setback. Similarly in nature to the previous request, because the proposed house is closer to the front lot line, any front porch and steps that's added to the front of the house need to be no closer than 31 feet from that front property line. Because the house is closer, the front porch and steps will be 22 feet from the front property line. So the petitioner is proposing to obtain a variance to allow the front porch, the unenclosed front porch and steps to encroach into that required front yard setback above and beyond the standard. And I am going to switch views and show you that is the house adjacent to the east, 503. That again has the front yard setback of 46.4 feet. So it's set back much further. And this is a photograph of prior to the house that it currently is under construction. This is closer to the intersection. And we'll take a look at the petitioner's drawings as well. Again, similar style house as to what's being constructed. Front entry attached garage, two-story front entry attached garage with a front porch. And we did not receive any public comment, audio or written, for this particular request. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing none. The petitioner, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then go ahead, present your case. You're muted right now, it appears.
I'm Brian Alamoff with Alamoff Building and Development. I'll have Jesse Parkinson from Green Tech take it over and explain exactly what we're trying to do here.
Hello, Jesse. You can go ahead and speak. Mr. Parkinson, can you hear us? We can't hear you if you're talking. You're very faint, Mr. Parkinson. Mr. Murphy. All right, seeing none. The petitioner, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then go ahead and present your case. It seems like he's on video delay. You're muted right now, it appears.
I'm Brian Alamoff with Alamoff Building and Development. I'll have Jesse.
Mr. Alamoff, I think
Jesse's struggling to join in.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. My name is Jesse Parkinson, and I'm with Green Tech Engineering.
You're very faint.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, if you could turn off the video audio in the background, it sounds like there's a delay going. It seems like he's on video delay.
I'm Brian Alamoff with Alamoff Building.
Mr. Parkinson?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So we came back in June to present our case for 415 Edmond, as you spoke about. We received a variance to build that home at 32 feet to the foundation, which is 29.7 to the second floor. So just in addition to what Joseph already said here, we just wanted to reiterate that these two new homes on lot 19 and 20, so the variances for lot 20, will be at the exact same distance off of the right-of-way as lot 18 at 415 Edmond, and the lot at the corner of Bellevue and Edmond, which is also going to be placed at that same 32 feet to the foundation, 29.7 feet to the second floor. So just to kind of clear things up there, all four of these homes at 3904 Bellevue, 415 Edmond, and these two future homes will be placed at the same exact distance off of Edmond. Furthermore, we've put together a diagram, and I think it was helpful back in June on another sheet here, if you can pull that one up. It basically shows the existing homes all the way from Main Street past Bellevue and on down all the way to Rochester Road. So what this shows us is that there's only two homes out of these 21 or 22 existing homes that seem to be outliers. One being the 503 Edmond, which is directly adjacent to lot 20. And the other one would be the home that sits at the corner, the northwest corner of Bellevue and Edmond. The one adjacent to us is 46 feet off the right of way. The one at the corner of Bellevue and Edmond is 10 feet off. So if you throw these two kind of outliers out of the calculations, we've tried to provide some numbers at the bottom of this diagram that show what the average setbacks would be of the remaining homes, and it's in the 30 foot setback off of Edmond range. So our ask of 32 feet to the foundation, 29.7 feet to the second floor are in line with what we would do as an average up and down the block. So if you have any questions with those numbers, I can answer those, but just wanted to kind of make clear that these two new homes will be consistent with the two homes that we're building due west of these two lots.
All right. Thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioners? Ms. Zukin.
So why can't you build it further back on the lot since you're starting with an empty slate?
Well, of course we can, but 46 feet basically leaves very little rear yard for, and we're trying to stay consistent with what's going on the block. So what we would like to do is create somewhat of a backyard for our homes.
Well, you wouldn't have to do it 46 feet back. You'd have to do it the average of the 29 and 46.
Right, and that average is 38 feet, I believe. So the ask is for 8 feet, just to remain consistent with the two that we're building to the west.
Mr. Klatt, you had a question?
Same exact question. Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, before we bring it back to this side of the board, wanted to remind you that we only have 8 board members instead of the full 9, so we're short 1, and you need 5 affirmative votes to pass the variance as requested. Do you wish for us to proceed, or do you want to wait a month and hope for a full board, which may or may not occur?
I think we're good to proceed.
All right, we'll bring it to this side for discussion and or motion. Anyone like to start off? Mr. Klatt.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, is there a second? Mr. Gavin, seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Klatt.
I think as the applicant stated, they could push the house back to comply, but I think it would be, I like the idea they're going for a uniform street appearance. I think the one house is an anomaly that throws off the curve a bit. So I think if they bring it forward, it'll be consistent with the other home adjacent to it. And overall, it'll do the street more justice. So I agree with their positioning and the request.
Mr. Gavin, do you have anything to add?
I think that summarizes it pretty well.
All right. Anyone else like to add, comment? Ms. Sukin?
I'll just say that I don't see any practical difficulty here, and I don't see a harm in having the houses, the setbacks vary along the street. Just because they built two other houses that are there, I don't think is a good enough justification to grant the variance in this request.
Thank you, Ms. Sukin. Anyone else? Mrs. Robinson?
Nobody that got the lot right next door, which would be what, to the east, the people that live there, they're going to be the house that is going to set back the most on that string of houses. They hadn't said, they didn't comment on this variance request at all, I'm asking. Mr. Murphy, I guess.
Nope. Mr.
No, they did not provide any comment.
Okay. Anyone? Mr. Reddy? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry.
okay.
I think I'm going to oppose this motion. I agree with what Ms. Zukin said. I don't see the practical difficulty in the extra 7-8 feet back.
Mr.
I also will oppose this. I think when they're building brand new homes, they can bring them into align with the standards that they need to. They're not altering anything that's already there, and I don't really see the practical difficulty in moving that back.
Well, I'm torn on this because I think originally the house that was there, and actually maybe the petitioner can let me know what the original setback of that house was there. I don't recall it. But I think it was closer to the street, not as far back as 503.
Actually, yeah, I can speak to that. The original home, which was roughly the same as the home at 503.
Okay, it was. All right.
I'm sorry. I can't speak to that right now. I'm going to pull that up right now while you're speaking, though.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
In any event, I could see the case either way. Practical difficulty. There is not one other than us if we're trying to make this street a little bit more uniform as the new houses go in. That would bring justice to the neighborhood. But I agree that the practical difficulty, if they can place it to meet what's required by code right now, or the variance, they could do that, and whether we grant them the variance or not. So I can see both sides on this one. So I'm sort of torn.
If the board would like, I can bring the survey up on the screen to show what
Sure.
the previous setback was. I know
Thank you, Mr. Russo.
Yeah, the previous setback was 44.3.
Okay.
So just for a little back history here, when we received the variances, and I know, we can't treat, with consistency one case versus another, but when we were discussing the variance request for the lot next door at 415, we took into account a 10-foot setback across Bellevue and a 44.3 setback at 423. And so just to average those two, the minimum required is 25 feet, but when you take the average of the 10.3 and the 44.3 from the previous case, the average setback was 28.3. So we did, we didn't ask for the full 28.3 back in the day, we asked for 4 feet more than that, just because we thought it was a good balance with the remainder of the street.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion before we move on to vote? All right, seeing none, we'll start at the bottom this time. Ms. George,
Yes.
Ms. Sukin,
No.
Mr. Klett,
Yes.
Mr. Gavin,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
No.
Mr. Reddy.
No.
All right, time the deciding vote. I'll vote yes. I will approve it. We granted it for the other two, and either way, it will make the neighborhood better with a new house on there. So the variance passes as requested.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. And we will move back to case number 2108-36, 31542, 31626 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Murphy, whenever you are ready.
Yes. So my apologies to the petitioner. We did get everything resolved, and they are here, and we're ready to start their case. I'm going to share my screen. The site in question is the Red Coat Tavern, and the restaurant occupies a spot on Woodward Avenue, and they have an accessory parking lot east of the public alley. Currently, they're required to have 47 parking spaces, and they are unable to meet that. So they're currently deficient, but they're proposing to demolish a portion of the building to the north. And that would accommodate an expansion of the restaurant, and they would install an outdoor cafe along the rear of that addition as well. Their proposal would expand some of the parking for their location because they would be eliminating a portion of the building that currently covers the site. So they do pick up several parking spaces in their expansion, but the restaurant space, the additional restaurant floor area, is 2,646 square feet, and they're also proposing an outdoor cafe that is 445 square feet in area. So the addition requires 41 parking spaces, and the outdoor cafe itself requires 7 parking spaces. You can see on the drawing that they also have a storage building across from their new parking lot on the very north end of the property, and that would require additional parking as a storage building as well. In the report, I'm gonna show that on the screen. I think it would be helpful to our conversation. There's a table in the report that breaks down the required amount of parking for their proposal. Again, the proposed addition, which is enclosed, 41 spaces, the outdoor cafe 7, and the storage building 2. So based on the changes that they're making, the additional floor space, they'd be required to provide 50 additional parking spaces. The modifications to the site net them 11 more parking spaces. So they're seeking the difference from what they're required to provide, what they are able to add additional. They're seeking that difference, that waiver of 39 of the required parking spaces. Again, they're currently deficient, but they're not penalized for that. They were simply a recognition of the circumstance, and any additional floor area, such as what they're proposing, is required to provide its amount of parking. I'll go back, flip back to the site plan, and the modification to the site does provide additional parking, some of that parking is located directly off of the alley. We define, as we did in one of the previous cases on East 3rd Street, the drive approach to access these parking spaces is the width of all the parking spaces together equal 48 feet. So it's essentially a 48-foot wide driveway in order to get to those parking spaces. As we noted in the commercial zoning district, ordinance does require or allow for a maximum driveway width of a commercial space of 30 feet. So they're seeking the difference so that they can accommodate the additional parking spaces off of the alley. I will note that the staff had provided the Planning Commission with some thoughts on amendments to various portions of the zoning ordinance several months ago, and one of those was to address the circumstance of a driveway width, 2 parking spaces off of a public alley versus off of a traditional right-of-way, a street, such as Woodward Avenue or 3rd Street in the prior case. The Planning Commission thought about the language that we had provided to them, but they did not act on it. So there is the provision that requires a maximum driveway width of 30 feet, whether again it's on a traditional street or avenue or off of a public alley. So the petitioner is here to seek a variance for that as well. We did not receive any comments with regard to this request, so I have nothing to play for you or to note written comments.
Any questions? I should say, Mr. Klett.
Mr. Murphy, do you factor in the right-of-way parking? There's about 9 or 10 spaces in the right-of-way adjacent to the property. Is that counted towards the total or no?
We do not. The ordinance requires off-street parking or parking, on-site parking is another way to put it. So that each individual property has to provide on its own property, they have to provide their required amount of off-street parking. Because the right-of-way can change, it's not dedicated to any one particular user. As we all know, there have been concepts of what may happen in the Woodward Avenue right-of-way, and that would probably certainly eliminate some or if not all of the parking that's there. So while it's present and it's able to be used by anyone, it's not counted towards the requirement for on-site parking.
Question. I noticed in the special land use memo from the Planning Commission, they suggested some site plan amendments. Does the current site plan that we're looking at address those amendments?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Let's see. I saw a whole bunch of hands, but I've lost track of who. I'll go with Mr. Reddy. Sorry.
I just had a similar question to the previous one on Woodward regarding the formula for the parking. Is it also like about 15 years ago?
No, I would say that standard's been in place for far longer.
Oh, okay.
Some communities do have provisions in their zoning ordinance which perhaps allow for a reduction in the amount of on-site parking that's required if there's certain, as you had mentioned, if there's transit within a certain distance or if there's public parking, on-street parking within a certain distance. The various planning commissions and city commissions throughout the time that I've been here never wanted to entertain such an idea because those things can fluctuate and they have the property owner, private property owner has no control of the adjacent public right of way or transit stops and their availability. It's been something that no one's wanted to amend the ordinance to allow for that, but it's not uncommon that you see that in traditional urban areas. Correct.
Mr. Moore.
Thanks. Mr. Murphy, do you happen to have a way to know if the neighborhood adjacent to this site, if they have permit parking or not? I know some of the neighborhoods along Woodward have permit parking for their residential streets. I'm just curious with this much of a deficiency in parking, if that were to overflow into the neighborhoods, if that's permit in that area.
I'm gonna look on Google Street View now. I do
Okay.
not know off the top of my head. And I imagine that the property owner probably very well knows that as well.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy?
That's the case. There is a sign on the south side of, it's hard to read it though.
I know there's a no left turn sign, but I'm just curious if the street itself is permit parking.
I think that's what it says, but it's not the right vantage point on Google Earth.
Okay.
Yes, I'm looking at the Google Street View image on Ravina, which is the street to the south, and that does highlight permit parking.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so any other questions? All right, seeing that, we'll let the petitioner introduce themselves and then go ahead, present.
Good evening. Mike Gordon here, representing the owner on my left, Matt Brown. Also with us, the wave-in from is Matt Hatz, who is the contractor for hopefully the project, and Evan, who you met earlier today. Matt's restaurant was started by his father in '72, soon to be 50 years in business. Obviously, it's a fixture in the community. The proposal here today is to expand the seating capacity of this successful restaurant. The expansion is long in coming. The recent events of 2020 helped push this along. The need for more space has been evident for a long time, as anyone who tries to drop in for the best burger in town can testify. There's also a need because of social distancing and the recent pass of limited seating capacity, and we think social distancing is going to be with us for a while. Even with the capacity limits lifted, people are still cognizant of people getting too close. We believe that people still want ample space, and this blending of indoor-outdoor space has become a real popular theme. The desire for fresh air, protected outdoor dining has been a long-time feature of many restaurants. Again, this has been amplified in the past few years, as seen by what you have done in downtown Royal Oak. The development of more cost-effective glass that allows the blending and blurring of inside and outside. As far as the parking, as noted, it's a challenge on some occasions, but as we return to using Lyft, Uber, and studies, notably a University of Colorado study just before the pandemic found that up to a quarter of all rideshare spaces save an average of one parking space. Non-motorized transport and a small but significant amount of foot traffic coming from the adjoining neighborhood, we believe less parking will be required in the future. Finally, when bookings warrant, Matt does employ valets, but he's also observed in the last few years that it has become less of an issue because people are coming in higher occupancy vehicles and for all the reasons stated before. Further, the parking calculation, as we talked about, the storage building is solely there as adding 2 spaces for storage. It seems redundant. It's just the way the math is handled. I mean, the people that are in and out of that building are the staff that would be there normally. Further, the new patio in back is 12 seats that are seasonal, which really should not impact the tech calculation. Further, the internal reworking of the building, we're eliminating the storage in there, and the square footage, we're losing 14 seats inside. We're expanding the restrooms, we're expanding the lobby, which doesn't really change the count of the people in the building, but just gives them more space to do the things that need to be done. The restrooms are desperately needed for the facility overall. And further, this renovation, in addition, is going to enhance the street front, eliminating some long dormant vacant buildings and create a more vibrant face along Woodward. We hope that you look favorably upon this project and that we will answer any questions. Thank you. Oh, and further, one more comment. When we went in front of the planning, there was concerns about has there been any issues with the neighborhood adjacent, and there was no police evidence that people had been concerns about parking in the neighborhood. and the building that has been occupied for almost 50 years, that speaks well of their management. And when you do valet, they can dense pack the parking on the site. And like you said, when the other businesses are closed, the one on Woodward, those spaces do become available. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Zukin, I saw your hand up first.
How much additional seating do you anticipate from the expansion?
Additional seating, give me a second.
Well, I counted on your site plan in the expansion, had 18 new tables or pairs of chairs at the bar. However, individual seats, I guess that's more than that, obviously.
Well, like we said, we met loss of 14 from the original restaurant because of the new passageways through and the new configuration. 32. It's about 60 more spaces inside and then the 12 outside.
Any other questions for the petitioners? I have one at least. What is your staff capacity at the height of
staff?
And where do they park?
Well, we have a position in between the two buildings for them to park right now, but the new staff would really only be about basically between what we have right now and what we would need. Maybe 4 spots.
Four additional above
4 to 5, really.
Because and don't get me wrong, I love your guys' Red Coat Tavern. I went there for my bachelor party back when I got married so many years ago. It's one of my favorite burgers. But I would love for you guys to renovate. And it always sucks waiting in line trying to get into your place. Concern is this renovation that just counting up the tables and at the bar, the pairs of seats, I've got 44 alone. And if you've got so many parking spots of like 57, I think it was, or whatnot, and you add in the staff there and you assume just best case scenario, everyone comes in one vehicle and you don't have any waiting, then you just got enough parking that alone.
Sure.
Demand is there. So I'm really concerned about spillover into the neighborhoods and that in the summertime you can handle this and not upset the neighbors. So I'm
of course. Yeah. I'm sorry. And we're concerned about our relationship with the neighbors, of course, as well. And we have a really good relationship with our neighbors. So I think actually we have, I don't know that as things have changed, more people are riding in the same cars. There's more consciousness about drinking and driving and whatnot. Uber, taking Ubers and we can what we have with our current parking is it's much more empty than it used to be. So we have people. Karen, what do you think?
Well, and as evidenced by this thing having been noticed at least 3 times and with no comments this evening, I think that speaks well of the relationships of the neighborhood. And people have had ample opportunity, like I said, because of the delay. This has been noticed twice. The previous one was noticed. So with no concerns, and everyone was perfectly aware of what the situation was. So I think that speaks well of what the neighbors think of the reputation and the facility.
Well, my concern is the neighbors might be thinking it's status quo, as in like you have you do have ample parking for your spot right now. This addition now brings a lot more tables in, a lot more possibility.
But it was advertised clearly that they.
No, I agree. I agree. Yeah. And many people don't understand what ends up happening, like Vincetta Garage in Berkeley, that situation. I'm just worried about that concern. Not saying it's gonna happen. I'm just saying my personal concern of what I count up in tables and seats and what I know of already visiting your establishment enough times and waiting and stuff like that. Granted, I haven't done it since COVID, other than to-go orders, but I'm just concerned once COVID ends, are we going to be ending up creating a problem for the neighborhood? That's my concern.
Right, yeah, I mean,
So carry on.
It's just a comment.
Yeah.
And
Sure, it's a legitimate concern, of course, and I think we have a very good relationship with our people who are neighbors next to us, and I think we haven't had any complaints at all, for many years actually.
And it's
Mr. Klatt, I saw your hand up next.
Set of garage is a great example, and they do use a valet service. You mentioned that earlier. Is that something you are going to maintain or provide for this new addition?
We can, yeah, of course.
well, and some evenings they don't because the capacity is not there. But yeah, but
It's
they
mostly
use
on
valet,
weekends,
yeah.
so because they can pack more densely, of course, on weekends, or on any night, if they're valeting, then people would park themselves. So we can do that. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, they do. They currently do. Although, like I mentioned, prior to the pandemic, the valets were less busy because the Lyfts, Ubers, people walking in, people in high capacity vehicles, really, I've gone there many times and never had a problem getting a parking spot. So,
Ms. George and then Mr. Moore.
I didn't have any questions or comments.
Oh, sorry. I saw your hand raised for a brief moment.
Sorry.
It was just a scratch or something. Mr. Moore.
So when you offer your valet service, do you remove the vehicles from your site? Are they going to a nearby business or something? I know Vincetta Garage, they have relationships with neighboring property owners that they park at. Or are you parking valet vehicles in your currently owned site?
No, we own the properties next door, and they can pack them more densely there. What the valet guys do.
They can park in the aisles. They can park because there's a driveway circulation. They can park 4 more vehicles back there.
So the valet parking will take up parking spots that are part of your parking calculation.
Oh, sure, part of it, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like part of it will be dedicated for the valet. And then, like they said, they can double park cars because they can move one and get the other one out, but you're not going to ask people to do that, but the valets will do that. So you can get more cars on the parking lot.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Klatt and Mr. Gavin.
What's your relationship with that open parking lot to the north across the alley? I see 2 parking areas. One's directly behind your existing building, and the other one is where the proposed addition is going to take place. Is that your lot as well? The site plan's a little confusing that I'm looking at on the screen that Mr. Murphy presented.
No, that's not part of it.
Okay.
But again, it's in the evenings, it's available.
Oh, that lot is available in the evenings?
In the evenings, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So it's overflow.
But you can't count it in the, yes.
Got it. So there's some agreement in place between you and that property owner to use that lot.
There is, correct.
Understand. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gavin.
That was one of my questions, so thank you for getting that, Mr. Klatt. And then the other was is actually probably more for Mr. Murphy. And if you addressed this already and I missed it, I apologize. Those angled those angled spots that are in front of the building along Woodward, those are not counted in the calculation, if I remember, for Woodward properties, correct?
That's correct. Those are in the public right of way, and they're available to anyone at any point in time. Obviously, customers can park there, but they're not part of what we include in the petitioner's required off-street parking, or otherwise known as parking on their site.
But clearly, with this property owner with 75% of the frontage along that, and almost all the parking is in front of the property that Redcoat owns.
Correct.
Yeah, they have pretty good use of that.
Do we know? Do we know how
Mr.
many spots are there? I'm sorry. I'm
No. I was going to add on to Mr. Murphy's that he's said in the past, which is this. I believe the state owns that, and at any given time they can do whatever they want to it, convert it into a bus lane, bike lane, whatever, make it go back to grass.
If the state had their right of way, they would not have any parking in the right of way along all of Woodward Avenue from start to finish.
Well, however, that trend is changing. If you look at what's happening in Ferndale with the diet reduction of Woodward, so I doubt if they're going to pave. They're trying to eliminate a lane through both sides of Ferndale.
Sorry, Mr. Gavin, you may go now.
No, that's fine. I was just kind of wondering. It looks like there's just kind of eyeballing it, at least,
There's like 13
so.
spaces.
Yeah, spaces. So I was curious about that.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, before we bring it back to this side board for vote, we only have 8 out of 9 board members. We need 5 for variance to pass. Do you wish us to go forward, or do you want to wait another month?
Sure.
And there's no guarantee next month you'll have a full board.
Go forward, of course. Let's go forward. Let's go easy.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it to this side of the table. Is there any discussion and or motion? Anyone want to start us off? Ms. Zukin.
I just have some comments. I'm torn on this. I welcome the expansion because I stopped going years ago because I don't like waiting. So I look forward to being able to get in, but I'm very concerned about the parking. I hate to see spillover on Ravenna or Chester. And I'm worried about backups on Woodward because I've had enough of that. I guess you could, that lot to the north that you said is available in the evening. That's every evening after 5?
Yes, correct.
Correct.
Yeah, but between Woodward and that lot, there's about 30 spaces.
Mr. Reddy.
We can't use can't.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add a comment that it seems that between that extra lot and the Woodward Street parking, that would explain why none of the neighbors have made a public comment now or in the previous opportunities. So it seems to me that if the parking were overflowing, there would be some opposition.
Mr. Moore.
I have to say I'm really torn on this, and my comment is, I feel a little bit of relief that they have the ability to use the extra lot or the parking along Woodward, but either of those could go away at any day because they don't own them. So I do still have concerns because this is a pretty large parking deficiency in my opinion.
Is there any motions one way or another? Mr. Clapp.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, is there a second? Mr. Gavin seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Clapp.
Well, just for some of the facts that were pointed out, I mean, there is no parking, I believe, along Chester's, per what I could see. And the same thing along Ravenna, it's permit parking only. They do have the ability to, there is that large surplus lot to the north, which they can park in the evenings, is per my understanding. I'm going to take them at their word for that. They will offer valet service if they need to. Our planning commission has reviewed this, scrutinized it, made some suggestions that the applicant has reacted to, and it's been approved by the planning commission. So for that reason, I'll trust the applicant will perform right by the neighborhood, and for that, I'll approve it. Make the motion to approve.
Mr. Gavin, anything to add?
Not really. I mean, this is a Woodward corridor problem continually, just parking, so it's probably going to be with us for quite a while yet. And I think Mr. Klatt summarized the reasons that I think this is allowable and can be dealt with appropriately, given the practical difficulty in this expansion and providing sufficient parking. So I'm in favor.
Any other comments? All right. I'll probably be voting in favor of this variance just because of the overflow parking. I am worried about a possible future situation of like Vincetta Garage with that overflow possibly going away, but without too many ifs and what ifs, I can't go by that. So I'll have to just go with my gut and saying, I think things will work out and there's enough parking right now. Because Woodward is a unique circumstance of not enough parking, especially for anyone with restaurants. So if there's no other discussion, we'll head toward the vote. Mr. Reddy,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Gavin,
Yes.
Mr. Klatt,
Yes.
Ms. Zukin,
No.
Ms. George,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. So the motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I look forward to the expansion
Thank you very much.
and enjoying it in person. I'm sorry, I'm not there yet.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.
Have a good night. All right. Other business, Mr. Murphy, do we have any that I know of?
Let's see. Let me check.
I don't believe so, but just wanted to check.
Oh, yes, I knew there was something. Obviously, the board is meeting virtually and not in person. The city commission has allowed individual boards and committees to make that decision for themselves. We are here, so to speak, today virtually. I think it would be appropriate if the board wants to continue to meet virtually through the end of the calendar year to make a motion to do so.
All right. Is there anyone who would like to make that motion? Mr. Gavin,
So moved.
is there a second? Mr. Moore seconds. All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the voting. Ms. George,
No.
Ms. Zukin,
Yes.
Mr. Klatt,
I'll say no.
Mr. Gavin,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Eddy.
Yes.
I too will vote yes, since the majority is wanting yes.
So the motion carries, and we will continue to hold virtual meetings at least through the end of the calendar year. And we can revisit it as the city commission revisits the local emergency order as well.
Good.
All right. Mr. Gavin,
Given Mr. Asbury's recent resignation, should we re-elect chairperson and vice chair?
I think it may be more appropriate to wait until there's a full board in order to do that, as so long as Mr. Ofek will be present to serve as vice chair for the remainder of the meetings until that occurs. I don't see the need for it. If the board members want to, you certainly have the opportunity. But I think it may be more appropriate to wait until there's a full board.
That's fine. And if there is an event where Mr. Ofak's not present, what's the procedure? Do we elect a temporary chair?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Whoever draws the short straw. No, there would be a vote. There would be a vote in order to elect someone to serve as chair for that specific meeting.
Mr. Moore, you had your hand up.
Those were both of my questions.
Okay. Any other questions? No other business?
Other than we will see everyone tomorrow, hopefully. Does anyone anticipate not being present at tomorrow's meeting?
Nope.
Okay. Fewer
All right,
agenda
who-
items, so we'll look forward to them. To that.
Who wants the favorite motion to end this? Anyone? Don't jump all at first. Mr. Reddy. I saw Ms. Zukin with her hand up second, so Mr. Reddy.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, Ms. Zukin seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. See you guys
everyone
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.